I don't normally do individual crime stories, and today I'm not doing that either. You've got so many crime stories coming out of New York City right now, and they're all illegal immigrants that are basically posting up in New York City because they know that they can get away with all kinds of crimes. And, you name it, they're doing it, and they're getting away with it because New York City is a sanctuary city, and they're not interacting with ICE at all. ICE has detainers, and we're going to talk about that in one of these cases. ICE has detainers for, a lot of these folks. And because New York City has this policy as a sanctuary city where they're not going to bounce people out by having ICE come in and take them away and deport them, these folks are just in this revolving door of crime. Today's story, illegal migrant allegedly commits 22 crimes in 6 months. And it will get worse, experts say. Let's jump on in. Let's get into it. Let's start reading. Let's take a look and see what we got going on. Give you a heads up of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about that one. Talk about the New York City police. That attack happened earlier in the year. That was nuts. And then one of the guys that was arrested for that, he's bailed out, and then he, beat somebody else up. You've got an 11-year-old migrant boy arrested as aggressor in New York City subway robbery linked to a string of Central Park muggings. It just goes on and on. And then we've got a bunch of sexual assault that has happened. I mean, it's just... And what's interesting is you are not hearing this on mainstream media because this does not fit the narrative of, they're all just, family friendly people. They're trying to escape a super violent, environment in their own country, wherever they came from. Well, I mean, when you have over 7 million people that have been let into the country and a bunch of them come from prisons. You got Tren de Aragua with a firm foothold in the United States now, specifically in New York City. And that's a Venezuelan prison gang. It's kind of this loose coalition of gangs that identify as Tren de Aragua. You've got them in the United States, and they know that they're protected in these big sanctuary cities because those cities, authorities won't turn over to ICE because somehow that is deemed to be, we can't do that. We can't have that. I mean, those border guys, those people trying to keep people out of the country, they're bad people. And yet, and here's the result, 22 crimes in 6 months. It'll get worse. And it will get worse. So that's why we're going down this rabbit hole today. And these are stories that, a number of them are old. A number of them a handful of them are current, but they're ongoing. They're ongoing. And most of mainstream media is like, oof, yeah, no, we're not going to, we can't really, we're not going to, that's not a story for us. I mean, not doing that. So you basically got Fox News and a handful of smaller independents, and you've got New York Post. New York Post just going ham because they're like, hey, assault over here, stealing people's phones, people getting beat up, people getting stabbed. This last one, New York City migrant stabbed in stomach outside Randall's Island shelter, cops say. Remember the stabbing of... what was the guy's name? Emilio Rodrigo, I think it was, in Scarface. He was the guy that Tony Montana and his buddy stabbed. They kind of got him inside the tent, inside an immigrant shelter underneath the freeway in Miami. And they took him out as a favor to the drug dealer that they ended up working for later. But yeah, that was a little stabbing. I mean, that was a violent scene. And here you've got violent scenes happening just all the time in the United States, not in these controlled illegal immigrant encampments, because we don't really do that anymore. We just, put them up in hotels and, give them the benevolence blanket is what one of the headlines said. I think we'll read that here. The benevolence blanket. That's a great way of putting it, isn't it? All right, let's get into it here. An illegal Venezuelan migrant with suspected gang ties who has allegedly committed 22 crimes in 6 months in New York City still hasn't been deported. It's according to a local news report in the House Judiciary Committee. When you're getting facts from the House Judiciary Committee, you know that it's elevated, right? Problem in New York is you have a sanctuary state and a sanctuary city, and they put politics ahead of public safety. And that's exactly what you've got going on right now. You bring 7 million people, 10 million people with getaways, whatever that number is. And these aren't church going. All these folks aren't church going people that are just, escaping a violent environment wherever their hometown is. No, you got a bunch of bad hombres. Period. And yeah, so putting politics ahead of public safety, said Tom Holman, who served as acting director of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, under President Trump. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. And this isn't going to go away. It's kind of like San Francisco trying to sweep their way out of the homeless, California trying to sweep their way out of the homeless industrial complex issue they've got going on. They've got some of the craziest homeless encampments in the United States. They've got the most homeless, and you sweep them out, they just come right back. You arrest these folks, and if you don't deport them, they just keep coming right back. I mean, we're watching it unfold in front of us, and a lot of the mainstream media, and then accordingly, a lot of the viewers out there are like, everything's great. This is awesome. This is great. We just need to get them more help. We need to give them more of a benevolence blanket. Daniel Hernandez Martinez, 30, a reputed member of the ultra-violent Tren de Aragua gang, all right, that's comforting, was first encountered by the U.S. Border Patrol in January 2023 in Texas, according to the House Judiciary Report released Wednesday. Agents noted his suspected gang affiliation and booted him back to Mexico under the auspices of the Trump-era Title 42 order that booted people out for speedy deportations. We're not really doing that anymore. In fact, we're not really deporting many folks at all. There are some numbers. The absolute worst of the worst gets kicked out. But clearly, in these big cities, that's not happening. And now you got 11-year-olds involved because they know if the adults are not getting booted out, what's going to happen to an 11-year-old? Nothing. Absolutely. Oh, we can't separate him from his parents. We can't have that. That's a hard no-go. Oh, no. Just let him go back out there. Yeah, but he beat somebody up with a baseball bat on the train. Well, he was practicing his swing. An upcoming major leaguer. But Martinez again breached the border, made his way to New York City to kick off a 6-month crime spree, terrorizing helpless residents, the government report alleges. He was arrested and released 8 times for alleged crimes that include attacks on 2 police officers and 3 strangers before ICE took him into custody. July 2023, Martinez allegedly was in the process of stealing a bag of potato chips and some toothpaste when he was confronted by an undercover officer. He was arrested, brandished a knife, threatened the cop, but then released without bail, and the charges were later dropped. So this is the cycle that you've got continuously happening. And even Eric Adams, mayor of New York City, he is saying, we've got to change these sanctuary city laws. We've got to be able to turn these people over to ICE. He's a former cop. He knows. But he also kowtows to a lot of this stuff that has gotten New York City into the position it's in, which is they don't have a way to work their way out of this. They don't. These folks are in the city. They're stuck with them. They're not going to be able to boot them out anytime soon. It's going to be years and years of working through just the crime that's going to be associated with these folks in the environment they're in, which is basically there's no consequences. There's no legal consequences for them committing a bunch of crimes, as this story exemplifies. 22 crimes. Yeah. What would happen if you or I committed a couple? Yeah, we wouldn't just be roaming around, right? Especially if it's, don't get me started. ICE sought a detainer against Martinez after his 7th New York City arrest in September. Been arrested 7 times. Again, 7 times. Yeah. And they know that there's no accountability for their actions. He was being held at Rikers Island Jail, which doesn't cooperate with ICE. That is straight up stupid. Straight up stupid, folks. And he was released in November 2023. Martinez allegedly continued his reign of terror and was busted 2 more times in New York City before landing in ICE custody. Finally. I mean, how does that work? All right. Yeah, we can't get to double digits here. Okay, we're close. Can't get to double digits here. So, let's do them. Here's our 2 fan favorites that have basically created this ridiculous mess. But these big blue sanctuary cities that have self-identified virtue signaling that they are sanctuary cities, they've created the mess themselves as well. But when you've got these 2 knuckleheads here on the screen, the border czar and this guy, is this guy even, what's he doing now? Where is he? We haven't heard anything from him. And the border czar, she's going to get tough on crime. She's going to really exemplify her criminal record. Her background is getting tough on the bad guys. Really? That's the road we're going down? Okay. I mean, I don't think the numbers really support that, do they? No. And so for 3.5 years, close to 4 years now, we've just been letting millions and millions of people through the border, and all of a sudden something's going to change? No. It's all politics, isn't it? This is what they want. They just want to let a bunch of, millions and millions of people, maybe they'll vote for us. Maybe they'll vote for our side. He was slated for deportation in June of this year after being turned over to ICE late last year. But the Post reported that his native Venezuela is not accepting flights and that Martinez will remain in America indefinitely. Venezuela, what a mess. What a mess down there, right? Yeah, we can't take him. Okay, we'll just take him. How do you not? Yeah, right. I mean, this whole thing is just so convoluted. This is going to get a lot worse under a Kamala Walz administration. Tampon Tim, that guy. I was watching footage of Minneapolis burning during the fentanyl Floyd protest riots. Fire bombings. I mean, you're just watching, business after business after business just being torched. That was crazy. And Tampon Tim, he didn't really do much about that, did he? He was like, it's mostly peaceful protesting. Happened all across the United States. And now he wants to be vice president. Okay. Well, yeah, not my guy. He will not have my vote. They've already made the decision that they care more about their base of support than the safety and security of American people. And that's why we're seeing this crisis. It angers every single Border Patrol agent. House Judiciary report took aim at Vice President Kamala Harris for minimizing the threat posed by illegal migrants. This is what we're seeing. Carte blanche, just across the board. Everything's fine. In fact, violent crime is down. Well, it's down if you cherry pick, right? If you cherry pick your data figures, because what I'm seeing isn't really a decline. It's an acceleration of basically out of control criminal activity because there's nothing to stop them. Incarceration, ICE, no. Deportation, no. I mean, yeah, the world's their oyster, right? And they're taking advantage of it. In 2017, then Senator Kamala Harris asserted that an undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. Well, when the first thing they do is they come into the United States at an area where they're not supposed to, that's a felony. So the very first thing they do coming into the country, if they're coming in illegally, and they're not coming through the border at the right point, that's a felony. So they are criminals. Let's make that clear. They are criminals and mocked any plans. This is 2017 and mocked any plans to remove illegal aliens from the United States. The report says, contrary to the border czar's claims, many of the illegal aliens allowed to enter the United States under Vice President Harris' watch are criminals who victimized Americans and terrorized U.S. communities. So you've got this whole, angle of, hey, look what's going on. And then the rest of society is like, I'm not really picking it up on my feed. I mean, the media isn't really, I don't really hear about that. That's not really a thing. I'm not really hearing what's going on. All right. Alleged migrant attack in New York City police sparks political uproar. We saw that one. Remember this video? So they're just about 12 of them, illegals, just beat down on New York City cops. I mean, that was horrific. I'm not going to play that video because it's pretty violent, and we've all seen that one. I mean, that happened, and then this happened. New York City migrant accused of vicious beating of Times Square cops arrested again after he's bailed out. After he's bailed out. That was another thing. Kamala Harris supported the Minnesota or Minneapolis Freedom Fund that basically posted bail for murderer, rapists, domestic violence perpetrators, just a whole bunch of bad guys, and a lot of the folks that were arrested, burning up Minneapolis. So she's, supporting this whole notion of, they're mostly good people. They're good people. No, she's supportive of criminals. And again, supportive of criminals here. After he's bailed out, cops arrested him again after he's bailed out. A migrant who led a gang of asylum-seeking thugs in a savage caught-on-camera beating of two New York Police Department officers in Times Square and then quickly made bail was just busted for serial theft. Yoheni, what's that name? Enrido, 24, of Venezuela, was arrested late Tuesday for a pair of thefts at Manhattan Sephora locations. One in July, in which he cut security wires on display cases to steal fragrances, and another August 6th, just recently, when he ripped off $1,358 worth of merchandise from store shelves. He was previously arrested and released over at least 3 other thefts, and both before and after the shameful Times Square police beatdown. These guys have no remorse. They're in the country. They're doing their thing. Doesn't really matter. I mean, nothing is going to happen to them. Nothing is going to happen to them until you start changing some of the sanctuary city policy. And I don't see that happening anytime soon either. I don't see that happening anytime. What the media is going to focus on is that, hey, the number of illegals crossing the southern border is way, way down. And it is. It is. It's a fraction of what it was. But the damage has already been done. You've already let 7 million, 8 million, 10 million people, however you'd kind of choose to count it, with the getaways. Most of the reports indicate 7 million. That's a ton of people. I mean, that's a big population shift. Some folks say, hey, we need them because they're willing to do jobs that others aren't. Yeah, but we need them vetted. We need them to go through the normal process. And maybe they don't stay in the country. Maybe they don't get granted parole. Because by doing so, we're just literally giving these folks, hey, go do whatever you want. Check back with us in 2029 when your immigration hearing is due, when we actually have that immigration hearing with you. Yeah, I mean, I've seen 2031, I think, was the furthest out date that I've seen. And that was from, I think that was from 2023. So, they've probably compacted that down by now. So Brito was one of 7 migrants seen punching and kicking New York Police Department officer and lieutenant in a disturbing video. It's that main crazy one. So the scuffle began after officers attempted to break up a rowdy crowd. And then he gets arrested again. But there's no repercussions for action. So why wouldn't this just keep on happening? And everybody just ignores it. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. That's not good. That's not good. 11-year-old migrant boy arrested as aggressor in New York City subway robbery linked to string of Central Park muggings. 11-year-old. So many of the stories I'm reading right now are kids involved with crime. Because if you're under 18, odds are you're going to do a little juvie time, maybe, but oftentimes they're just cut loose. Let's just cut them loose. Let his parents deal with them. And there's no real parental authority because otherwise parents have their kids in school and they're not out mugging people in Central Park. Yeah. Wild, right? Let's take a look at this one here real quick. An 11-year-old Venezuelan boy was arrested as the main aggressor in a violent subway mugging. And he's been linked to a larger string of robberies in Central Park being committed by migrant kids, police said Wednesday. Why aren't they in school? Well, it's summer. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Do you think this 11-year-old would be in school otherwise? Maybe. Hey, why weren't you in school on Monday, Johnny? I had to boost some whatever. I had to steal some stuff, and only, a few muggings, a few beat downs, and, I got arrested. It's okay though. What are we studying today? Right? Baby-faced perp. He's 11, and he's not a big 11-year-old. Take a look at him. Right, he's right here. See if I can get my yellow button to go. There it is. Here's our perp right there. 11, and they're using him. Hey, come help us out. We'll make you part of the crew. The baby-faced perp and a 17-year-old boy were taken into custody hours after they allegedly attacked a strap hanger, somebody on the transit, right, on a Manhattan bound 7 train at about 8:40 p.m. Tuesday near the Venon Boulevard Jackson Avenue stop in Queens. He just kind of grabbed it, and from there, he's talking about he stole the phone. 24-year-old victim told the Post by phone on Wednesday. And here he is. I mean, okay, and they're taking another dude in there, one of his, the 17-year-old helper. When I fought back to try to get my phone, they attacked. They jumped me. He described the younger boy to cops as the primary aggressor in the incident because he's 11. They're not going to do anything with him except, hey, let's find out where his parents are. Where's this kid live? Let's take him there. I mean, you know what I mean? Nothing's going to happen to him. He's just, the world is his oyster. He was essentially provoking it, recalled the Manhattan-based IT professional who requested to be anonymous. He was just up in my face and stuff like that because they know they're going to get away with it. They've got the license to steal, license to ill, right? The young suspects had the stolen phone with them when they were nabbed near the Roosevelt Hotel migrant shelter. That is the main shelter that has been, that and Randall's Island have been the main ones that you hear about in New York City, where there's just always something going on, whether it's people on scooters, illegally working, running around, stabbing, shooting, sexual assaults. I mean, it's just going on all the time. And that's Midtown Manhattan, where the Roosevelt Hotel is. That was 10:15. Police officials said the 11-year-old was also caught on surveillance camera using credit cards that were stolen during a series of robberies in Central Park. 11-year-old. Yeah, is that your card? It's my parents. Okay, let's ring it up. Yeah, you got the PIN number there? No. At this point in time, we're ready to call it. This is a migrant robbery pattern. That's what you're going to see. That's what you're going to see in headlines coming up. Migrant robbery pattern. Because it is. These are serial robbers. Serial robbers. And this is from New York Police Department Chief of Patrol John Chell told reporters from 7th Avenue and West 59th Street. Police have linked roughly 10 robberies that have taken place inside or along the southern end of the green space of Central Park to a group of up to 12 migrant boys or young men. They're young. They're under 18. Nothing's going to happen to them. We think they're responsible for most of them, if not all of them. And we're just figuring this out now. We've been following this, but now we can identify and go, all right, yeah, we've got them on camera. We're linking this guy, this kid to this kid. And then what's going to happen? Not much, right? They're just going to be released, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. A senior law enforcement official said police believe the violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua is behind the migrant robbery crew and are investigating the possible connection. What do you think? What do you think these gang members think about Americans, about the United States? I mean, they must say to themselves, how dumb are these people? They allow us to come into their country illegally. They put us up in hotels. They give us food. They give us debit cards. They give us work permits when we're not really supposed to have them. We commit crimes and they won't deport us. They basically protect us. How stupid are these people? Now, in New York City, yeah, fairly stupid because this is what's going on. This is the end result. The gang has lower level members operating at city funded shelters who enlist teens and young boys to go out and commit robberies. Okay. And you'll hear about robberies on the scooters as well. Not only do they use scooters to basically illegally use somebody else's DoorDash account and then, run around, and they got to give the person whose scooter it is or rent the scooter illegally because it doesn't have any tags, it doesn't have any plates, and then illegally use somebody else's DoorDash account and, just crime all down the line. New York City is trying to combat that, but you just don't have the resources and you're overwhelmed because this is an organized gang. It's an organized gang committing these crimes, and they know that if they hire the younger members, the lower level members, there's going to be no repercussions. Central Park muggings date back to at least June 27th, with the most recent is also taking place Tuesday night. It was less than 24 hours after 3 teen boys, 14, 16, and 17, were nabbed for robbing 3 male victims, 15, 21, and 35, of their AirPods and jewelry around 1 a.m. Just a standard mugging. Everyone used to just hear about a mugging and then there'd be some kind of knife attack. Yeah, times have changed, right? Because now it's basically all illegal immigrant committing these crimes. The subway mugging later Tuesday involved 4 youngsters who surrounded the victim and snatched his phone before beating him. They essentially hit me in the back of the head. When I tried to get my stuff back, they ran off the subway car, as you do. You got to book it. You don't want somebody to chase you. You need to just get there. And here's the Roosevelt Hotel. This is the infamous hotel that used to be a very nice hotel. And now you've basically got a line around the block because people get booted out after 30 days. And then they got to stand in line, try and get a room again. You got all kinds of illegal scooters out in front. And it's just a revolving door of criminal activity. I mean, only to be supplanted by Randall's Island, where you've got somewhere around 3,000 illegals staying. So that is just nuts, right? Let's move on to the next one here. Migrant charged with the R word in the 3rd New York City sex crime bust of an asylum seeker in 2 weeks. This is part of that whole narrative of where it's becoming wildly apparent that, if you're an illegal, you can just go ahead and take advantage of whomever you want. And what will the repercussions be? Will they actually deport you? Will they actually deport you? Yeah, good question, right? And the odds are no, they won't. So this is kind of an overview. A Senegalese national who crossed the U.S. border illegally last year is now charged with R-wording a 36-year-old woman in the Bronx, one of 3 migrants busted for those kind of crimes in the Big Apple in the past 2 weeks. Papa Drop, foot 38, was arrested Saturday and charged with rape and abuse in the vicious assault attack that took place shortly before 2 a.m. in the South Bronx. So you've got that one. You've got, it's insane what's going on. You got Coney Island. Have you heard about this one? These guys are drinking, what were they drinking? They were drinking Modelo, #1 beer in Estados Unidos, right? #1 beer. Let's get this down. They're drinking all night. They're drinking into the morning. You've got this homeless couple staying underneath the boardwalk. You've got these illegals kind of spying them. And boyfriend, it's morning. It's like 8:30 in the morning, I think. Boyfriend goes to get a coffee, comes back, and they are just going to town on this young lady. And so the boyfriend tries to intervene, but they've got a knife up to her throat. And just extremely violent. And this is in the morning. This isn't 1 a.m. on the whatever train. It's just absolutely wild. This kind of stuff is going on. But then again, what would you expect? Right? What would you expect? And this is what you expect. The homeless woman allegedly R-worded at knife point by a migrant with a sexual assault history in Brooklyn told the Post Tuesday that she felt the brute was actually trying to kill her. It wasn't the R word. It was attempted murder, the 46-year-old woman told when the Post is not identifying the woman. I mean, that's pretty standard sex crime. He didn't try to R-word me. He tried to kill me. I keep telling him that God was watching him. All right, maybe that worked. Maybe that's the go-to. I mean, it's horrible to think about. Okay, how do you defend yourself in this situation? And you essentially don't, because it just happens. And then they beat the boyfriend with a pipe, and he had to run off and get police. And whole thing is just, she added, I hope he gets a long time. I'm afraid he's going to kill somebody. Probably will. Daniel Devon Bonilla, 24, a Nicaraguan migrant, was charged with the brutal Sunday assault under the Regelman Boardwalk. That's Coney Island Boardwalk, right? The victim and her boyfriend had been living in an area under the boardwalk behind the park stadium for about 2 weeks, part of a garbage-strewn encampment shared by homeless people, including migrants, they said. So you will see in the homeless encampments women being taken advantage of all the time, because oftentimes, snitches get stitches, so they won't report these crimes happening. But I think this one was so blatant, and the boyfriend was so afraid that, hey, she's going to get killed. They called 911. They just copped up right away, right? Her boyfriend, Ray Ramsamy, 34, said he saw Devon Bonilla and his alleged accomplice, 37-year-old Mexican national, Luando Moreno, drinking Modelo beers the night before and even the morning of the attack. So they're just, they're on a roll. They're on a alcohol-fueled roll. And they see this chick and they think, well, they're homeless. We can take advantage of her. Wait for her dude to leave. We'll go over there and say hi. And they do, and a lot more. He went to get coffee and came back to the makeshift camp at around 8:45 a.m. This is out in the open. 8:45 to find his girlfriend being brutalized. When I came up, he was clearly choking her and having sex with her and holding her down with a knife on her face. She was screaming loudly. I mean, so horrific. It's tough to read these stories after a while, because you're like, oh, humanity. Where is the humanity in this? And I think what you have to realize is that a lot of these folks coming from Venezuela are good people. I truly believe that. They are trying to escape something. But then percentage-wise, and the numbers don't lie, a bunch of them are going to be bad. And we know that. We know that Tren de Aragua is here. Tren de Aragua is probably here in Seattle. We know for sure it's in Portland. So that's about as far the West Coast as you're going to get. And you got New York City. You got the West Coast and you got the East Coast. They're ever in between, right? Because they're a gang and that's what they do. And they're leaving Venezuela because the pickings are great here in the United States. Hey, you can just do whatever you want. Yeah, take advantage of whomever you want. It's all good. There's no repercussions. When he tried to intervene, Moreno allegedly slammed him in the back with a pipe, as you do. I tried to pull the guy off her and he tried to stab me, Ramsamy recalled. I grabbed the pipe with one hand and the other one was behind me, hit me with a brick, hit me in the back. I mean, that's just some straight up violence, right? And you know what? There's always straight up violence, but somebody's always beating on somebody else. There's always going to be these kind of crimes happening. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing more of a pattern of illegals committing these crimes and multiple times and not being deported. They should be deported after the first time, period. Boom. That's one of the issues with these, virtue signaling, self-proclaimed sanctuary states and sanctuary cities, with, Minnesota, Minneapolis being a prime example of, they've got a budget and that budget is going to go crazy and they're going to have to jack up taxes to basically, try and hold things together, because all of the commercial markets in the United States, tax base isn't there. You don't have all the taxes being paid that you once did. And so you've got budget deficits everywhere. And so, these big communities that are trying to spend literally billions of dollars. I think one of my next stories is New York City is going to spend $5 billion, and then it'll probably run to $10 billion a year here shortly. Meanwhile, they've got all kinds of residents that are homeless and their shelter system, but we're literally spending billions with our blanket of benevolence, right? Let's finish this one out. She was hurt a lot, but I was hurt a little. I'm a man. I got feelings, but she was really hurt. Ramsamy added of his girlfriend of 2 weeks, with whom he had been living in an encampment on Coney Islands. She's messed up right now. When it started getting dark out last night, she was getting paranoid. She sees Hispanic men today and she thinks it's going to happen again. She's really upset. I mean, I don't blame her. She had an awful, awful thing happen to her. And that's horrific. And what folks, want to say is, well, you're always going to have some of this criminal activity, but you don't need to have this one happen if you actually have an enforced southern border. If you actually have some kind of immigration policy that's enacted. But now it's too late. It's too late. You've already got these folks. They're already hunkered down in the United States. They are already here. They are already set up. They already have housing. They've got all this, and they're not being deported. They're not being deported. So let's move on from this one. Yeah, the ICE had to detain her for the migrant we just talked about, accused of raping a woman under Coney Island Boardwalk, but he was never deported. So ICE had him multiple times, and they're like, we need to do something with this guy. He's a bad guy. Migrant from Nicaragua, who allegedly R-wooded a woman at knife point in Coney Island, had a federal immigration detainer placed on him after a prior assault of the same nature, but he was still free to roam around New York months after his release from jail. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Laws do not allow us to coordinate with ICE. That's the law, His Honor said at a Tuesday press conference. I'm not happy about that. Well, you shouldn't be, because justice isn't happening. And your citizenry is at risk. You've got major public safety issues. Major public safety issues. We've got an encampment here in Seattle that's been bouncing around. It bounces from Kent to Seattle to back to Des Moines to Burien. And you are continually hearing about some kind of shenanigans happening, right? Some kind of shenanigans happening as far as criminal activity. There's always something going on because a lot of these folks, they don't have their work visa yet, or they're not really interested in working, or they are working. It's just that it's criminal activity that they're working on. So they've got a lot of time on their hands and they're always doing something. We haven't even touched on the number of, the amount of money being spent on police activity, fire department having to come out. Just the list goes on and on and on. But this guy here, he should have been, this could have been totally avoided. This story right here could have been totally avoided had New York City not been a sanctuary city and virtue signaled, oh, we're not going to turn anybody over to ICE because ICE is terrible. They're bad. They're the bad man. Nah, they're trying to protect the border. But under the current administration, that's just not happening, is it? Just not happening. Yeah, here's that last story. New York City migrant stabbed in the stomach outside Randall's Island shelter. I mean, you've got these things happening on the go. They are they're happening every single day. One or two of the worst will actually make it into the news. But how many of these are not being reported? Because they're either committed on a homeless person or another illegal immigrant, and they don't want to jeopardize their situation as an illegal in the country. Maybe they got something on their record back home. They don't want to jeopardize that. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to get the officials involved. They don't want to get the police involved. So they don't ever say anything. I think there's a ton of that activity going on right now, and we're only seeing a small fraction of what's actually being reported. So, the Biden administration wants to say that violent crime has gone down. I think they're totally cherry picking data. And with the stories I'm seeing a pattern of, okay, yep, that makes sense. All right. Yep. Another one. All right. They're using kids. All right. We know how they operate and the authorities know what's going on, but their hands are tied from the standpoint of most of these stories are happening in big blue sanctuary cities. It's happening in San Francisco. It's happening in New York. It's happening in Boston. Boston's got some crazy stories because, their governor and their mayor have gone down that whole, just nutty. All right, we're going to put them up in the airport. We're going to put them up in a federal airport. It's a state problem. We're going to put them up in the federal airport and it should work out just fine. I mean, some of the stuff going on in Massachusetts is nutty. They're just making decisions that are horrific, but they see them as being, benevolent. They see them as being compassionate to their fellow human being. Well, how about this guy who gets stabbed in the stomach? And then how about that woman who's just wildly assaulted? And then, the cops that got the beat down. I wonder how they feel about the compassion for their fellow human being. Probably not real strong, right? Not real strong. So, all right, that's it for me. This is kind of a series of stories of, hey, this is what's going on out there. And this isn't all that's going on, but it's kind of one of those barometers. And I think you're not seeing this from most of the rest of media because it's kind of brutal. And some of these stories are like, oof, yeah, that's hardcore. And it is hardcore. This is criminal activity that is hardcore. And it's from, with Tren de Aragua, they're a violent gang out of Venezuela. And we're just welcoming them into the country. Yeah, we'll vet you when we get to you. And that's got to stop. So make that vote count coming this November. All right. That's it for me. Thanks so much for listening and watching, whatever it is you do. I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday, and I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.